2, 1. Okay, what we're going to be doing today is setting up Amazon S3 to host a static website. In this video, we are not going to spend a lot of time on setting up and configuring the S3 bucket. There is a separate video available on this channel that will walk you through the steps necessary to create an S3 bucket. You will find a link to that video in the description section of this video. So the first thing we want to do is sign into the AWS console. We are going to visit S3. Now, in this case, you'll see that the recently visited section already contains S3, and that's because we visited this S3 console earlier. Now, once you get to the S3 buckets area, in our case, we already have a Amazon S3 bucket. It's called Quick Starts Bucket 1, the number 1. Again, we won't be going through the steps on how I created this bucket. You'll find a link to the video in the description section. It's a fairly short video showing you how to create an S3 bucket and upload files into it. In fact, you'll find the exact video that was used to create the bucket that you're looking at right now. Quick Starts Bucket 1. Okay, so what we want to do at this point is, once you have created a bucket in S3, the very next thing you want to do is select that bucket. You select the bucket by clicking on it. Once you click on the bucket, you'll be given a series of options here. And I do want to point out that this is the newer Amazon console interface. When you sign in to the AWS console, you'll be asked to provide whether or not you want the new experience or the old experience. I've opted for the new experience. And fairly, all of your functionality will still exist. Just the look and feel has changed somewhat. So what we want to do now is, inside of the Quick Starts Bucket 1, you can see there's an images folder. If I click on the images link, you'll see that there are 2 images located in that folder. Okay, I'm going to go back to where I was before. To do that, I'll simply come up to this breadcrumb menu here, click on Quick Starts Bucket 1, or whatever the name of your bucket is. Okay, so I just pointed that out to show you that we already have a bucket. That bucket contains a folder. That folder contains images. So what we want to do next is click on the Properties tab. And then the Properties tab will show you multiple options. What we want to do is scroll down to the very last option. And none of the other options here will matter to you for the purposes of creating and hosting a website on S3. So you don't have to be concerned about any of these. Whatever you have here should be sufficient. Now, if you have already configured S3 buckets for other activities, then you may have some things here that need to be addressed. I would recommend that you create a brand new bucket for this activity if that's the case, as to not disturb any of the other buckets that you might have for other purposes. By creating a new bucket specifically for this purpose, you can follow this video without any interruption or any difficulties. Once you get to the static web hosting section, which happens to be ironically the very last section on the page, you want to click the edit button. Okay, and this is very, very straightforward and simple. You have one option. You can either enable this or you can leave the page. We want to enable static web hosting. Okay, once that option is selected, you'll find that you have several other options that will appear dynamically after you select enable. For the hosting type, we want to leave host a static website selected. And then we want to scroll down to the index document field. Now here, what I'm going to recommend is that you type in index.html. Index.html is pretty standard index name for an HTML file or website. And this is basically, this is required. You have to have something here. This will be your default page for your browser, for your website that your browser will visit. What I also want to do while we're here is the error document, which is optional. The error document is optional. Even though it's optional, I'm going to go ahead and add a page here. I'm going to call it 404.html. Since this is a fairly common error on the internet, it basically means that whatever resource the user pointed their browser to was not available, could not be found. Redirection rules, we're not going to use those. Those are optional, just as error document was. However, I would like to point out that if you're coming from a world of you're a hobbyist or you're a web developer and you've used cPanel, this would be normally where you would these redirection rules. This is normally where you have your the information that would normally be contained in a .htaccess file. So in the general web development world, your redirection rules would go in a .htaccess file. In this case, if you had such rules, you could put them here. That's not what we're here for. That's more advanced than what we want to get into. And that's it. You're going to hit the Save Changes button. So now we've enabled this bucket to host a website. And if you scroll back down, and you'll find your static web hosting section now is updated. It is showing that you are now hosting. And you'll also have a URL that's been provided by Amazon to you. Now what we're going to do now is click on that link, and while we do have a response, that response is a 403 error page. It's basically saying we don't have access. Our access is denied. Okay, and that's exactly what you should get, because Amazon Web Services follows a deny all security model. Everything is denied when it comes to S3. All access has to be allowed or opened by the admin or a admin. That's a very good security posture to have, and it's one that Amazon uses. All right, so and I just closed out the success indicator at the top of the screen there, and what we'll do now is open up that access so we don't get that error when we visit the URL that was provided by Amazon. In order to do that, what we want to do is scroll back up to the top of the bucket page. This time we're going to look for, you should be on the properties tab, but we want to go to the permissions tab. So we'll click on permissions, and we will scroll down the page. Block public access. That's what we're looking for. These bucket settings are currently set to, if you look down a little further, you'll see block all public access, and you'll see a little green check mark, and next to it, it says on. Okay, and essentially that means exactly what it says. All public access is blocked. And you may be saying to yourself, well, we're actually in the AWS console, so technically that's not public, and you'd be incorrect because that URL that was provided to us is public facing. However, in other words, if I were to take that URL and send it to someone, I'm going to go back to the URL just briefly to drive home a point. If I were to take this URL, and send it out to people, they would get the same thing that I'm getting here. And that's because this is, in the end, in an Amazon AWS.com, which is at the very end of this series of subdomains. The root domain is Amazon AWS.com. And Amazon AWS, which I'm going to type out right now to further drive this home, redirects to an actual AWS website. So this is a public-facing domain, and that was the purpose of me pointing all of these things out to you. This is a public-facing domain. It is, however, locked down for public access. So the domain itself is public, but the bucket itself has been locked down so that no access can be granted, as we can see here. So, and what I'm doing is switching back and forth between tabs. You may not be able to actually see the tabs themselves. It's because the video's recording area was designed to not show the tabs purposely. So what we're going to do now is go back to the permissions area, and we're going to come down to back to the block public access bucket settings area, and we're going to click edit. And I'm going to expand this first just to show you that all of these options are grayed out, right? You really can't do anything here but click edit. That is the only option that's available to us. Now, before we do this, I would strongly recommend that you understand that once you click the edit button, it basically just takes us to the same information that was shown in the previous collapsed menu, but this time you have a check mark. Once you start altering public settings, right, this is completely locked down right now. You cannot be accessed from the public. Once you uncheck this checkbox, which is what we're going to do, you are opening yourself up to, you're no longer locked down. I'll just put it that way for the purpose of this discussion. You're no longer locked down to the same degree. We want to do that. We won't be revisiting what each of these means today, because that's not the purpose of this video. Once you uncheck the block all public access button, you click save changes. Now, again, Amazon takes security seriously, so there are multiple steps required to confirm that you want to do this. Because as I was stating earlier, once you open this up, the public can access the bucket. That means that anyone who is trying to find this particular bucket, if they find it, they'll have access to it. That's not necessarily the worst thing in the world, because obviously you want to host a website, right? We want it to be open. But what you don't want is it to be more open than you'd like it to be. I'll just put it that way for now. So what we're going to do is, since we've made this public now, since we've removed this blocking of public access, we need to confirm it by typing the word confirm in, then pressing the confirm button. Okay, so now you'll notice in the block public access area, the once on icon that was green now says off and is red. So I'm going to go back to that tab that contains the URL. I'm going to refresh the page. And well, lo and behold, after all of that hoopla, right, after all of those warnings and all of those, notes and special notifications about being public, it's actually still showing us the same error. Okay. And that's a good thing. It may not seem like it right now, but that is a good thing. And the reason why we're getting the error that we're getting is because although we have unblocked the public access, we now need to make the content publicly available. I know that sounds like doing the same thing twice. That is how Amazon's web services S3 bucket policy rules work. And it is a benefit. It may not seem like it, but it is a benefit. And you can never be too secure. And by doing it this way, we are basically, Amazon is basically saying that everything is closed. Everything is denied. If you want something to be available, then you, the admin, have to make it available. We're going to make you go through the steps and do your due diligence to make it available, as opposed to everything being open, right? And then the admin being responsible for shutting down all of the possible attack vectors, right? In the security world, denying everything, denying all access, and then opening up access that you specifically want is much more secure than having everything open and then trying to lock down all of your attack vectors. So that's what we're going to do next. We're going to make this bucket available to the public. So now what we want to do is, we're already at the permissions tab. We want to come down to the bucket policy section. We want to click the edit button. Now, I'm not going to type all of this out. I am going to get into a small bit of detail just so you understand what's actually happening here. What I have prepared is text that we're going to insert here in the form of JSON. Okay. And this JSON is basically going to update the bucket policy to allow us to visit, or the public to visit, the particular bucket that we set up. So what we're going to do is back to the breadcrumb, click on Quick Starts Bucket, click on Properties, the iron Amazon resource name is what we want. Scroll to the left of that, click on the copy icons. We'll go back to our permissions, and the policy is being erased because I'm not saving it. I pasted it, but I never saved it, and that was done purposely because I knew I had to change it. So this time, my code has been updated with the ARN. Okay. I like to include errors that are discovered when creating content because this is what happens in the real world. There's nothing more frustrating than watching a video where everything goes flawlessly, and then when you try to execute these things, they don't. So I purposely include errors in my videos because these are things that you will face in the real world. Everything always works perfectly in a lab. All right, so now you can see that since I replaced the substituted ARN, the ARN for the resource, I no longer have the errors. So now we're going to go to the Save Changes button. We'll click that, and we're being told there's an unexpected error. Okay, action does not apply to any resources in statement. So what I've observed is that the reason that our bucket policy isn't being accepted and is throwing this error is because at the end of the actual bucket policy, and I don't particularly agree with this, I think that for a company as big as Amazon, that something like this should be automatically added, or at least the error logic should be smart enough to tell you that you need to do this. What we need to do is put a / in and an asterisk. It's basically saying that the resource is this bucket and the directory, anything that's in the directory contained in this bucket. Okay? Anything that is in this bucket is what the asterisk is for. And the / basically tells the URL or the browser to point to the actual directory, right? Which is the root of the bucket itself. So let's hit save changes. Okay, and voila. What we have here now is you'll see an indication that this quick starts bucket 1 is actually publicly accessible now. What I wanted to do now is go back to the tab that was originally showing us a 403 error and refresh it. And boom, there you have it. This is the actual HTML file that was uploaded to the bucket. This is text that was contained in that HTML file. You got more text here. And this is actually the Quick Starts logo. Right click on it, select open an image in new tab. And if you look closely, obviously you can see that's the actual URL. I mean, obviously you can see that that's actually the image. I'm going to open up the inspector in the browser, console, and if you look at this path, you'll see quickstarts-bucket-1.s3-website-us-east-1.amazon.com images. Quick Starts logo, quickstarts-logo blue.png. So I'm merely showing you that so that you can see that this is not only are we capturing the HTML content, the image is also being pulled and shown in the browser. If we go back and we look at the object itself, you can see that here's your images folder directory. If we drill down into that directory, you'll see images. There's one for the color blue, and there's one for black also. So we have successfully uploaded this static website onto an S3 bucket. Now, if you recall, we also included a 404 file, which we're going to use as our custom error document. All right, and to do so, and if you don't know, an error document or 404 error is usually returned from a web server whenever a user visits a site that attempts to visit a URL that doesn't actually exist, or is searching for a file that's on that server that doesn't actually exist. We're going to close out this notification. And we're back at our bucket page. We're going to drill down into the bucket. Now, the first thing we want to do is, just like we have this index.html file, we want to also upload a 404 file. So I'm going to click the upload button. I'm going to click the add files button. I'm going to grab the 404 page HTML document that had been previously created. And then I'm going to click the upload button. Okay. And now that page is actually in the bucket itself. Okay, I'm going to go back to the destination. I'm going to click on it, and that takes me back to the HTML file. I'm sorry, back to the Quick Starts bucket. And now you can see the HTML file is actually here, along with the index.html file. The error HTML file as well as the index file are both contained in the bucket. Now, if you recall, originally when we enabled the HTML site or the hosting on the S3 bucket, we were asked to provide the name of our 404 file, and that name we provided was 404.html. The file that I just uploaded is named qs-404.html, so those don't match. And let's go back and look at that. Click on Properties, scroll down to Static Web Hosting. I'm going to click the Edit button, and in the error document field, which is optional, 404.html is the name that we provided. So I'm going to cancel out of this. I'm going to go back to the Objects tab, and I'm going to rename this file from qs-404.html to simply 404.html. To do that, I'm going to place a check mark in the box next to the file. I'm going to come over to the Actions drop down, scroll down, and then under Edit Actions is the option to rename object. I'm going to click on that. I'll find my file name. I'll erase the unnecessary characters. Click Save Changes. And now I have in fact changed the name of the file from qs-404.html to 404.html. Now I'm going to try to get the browser to throw that error. Right now I've revisited the actual index page, and I'm going to place a / in the browser, which you can't see, the address bar of the browser. And I'm just going to make up something. I'm just going to say ABC123 and hit enter. And voila, just like that. That is our custom 404 page. So what we've done in this video is we have taken an S3 bucket. We enabled the ability to host web pages on that bucket. We then, the next very important step that we took was to enable the account for the permissions by allowing access to the S3 bucket, and then creating a bucket policy that specifically allowed read access on that same bucket. We also uploaded our website HTML files for the index page as well as the files for the error page. There's a whole lot more you can do that is beyond the scope of this video. If you'd like to learn more about S3 or any other AWS services, let us know in the comments. If you liked the video, found it useful, hit the like button or let us know in the comments. If you'd like to be notified when newer content is posted in the future, subscribe to the channel and click the notify bell.